All right, guys, we need to talk. We really have to talk about these supposed rumors for Star Wars. Now, before I go into this video, I want to say a couple of things. First and foremost, I want to make it very, very clear that I have nothing personal against Doomcock Overlord DVD. I don't like drama. I don't want drama. I can't stand it on YouTube. But these stories that are coming out now about this George Lucas cut of The Rise of Skywalker, look, I don't know if Doomcock is making it up. A lot of people think that he is, apparently, or if he's just not very good at discerning what's good and what's bad, right, as far as news goes. Because if this guy's just getting emails from random, quote, sources, and he's not doing his due diligence to double check these sources, it's going to end up eventually biting him when it doesn't come true. Now, I want to do a video discussing the George Lucas rumor of a Lucas cut of The Rise of Skywalker. Now, as I get into this video, I want to also say that I know a lot of people don't like the sequel trilogy, and I'm one of them. Let me tell you right now, I do not like the sequel trilogy. I do not like the way Disney has treated this franchise or treated George Lucas. I am not a fan of the Disney version of Star Wars. I did like Force Awakens, but everything after that was kind of not so great. Rogue One was okay, and Mandalorian's good. But any of the stuff that Kathy Kennedy has been behind, I am not a fan of it, okay? Making that very clear. However, there's a lot of BS going on here about George Lucas. So on this video, I'm going to prove with evidence that George Lucas is not involved in the sequel trilogy. So the rumor that's been going around now, I want y'all to understand something, first of all. Understand and be very careful. And I'm speaking to every Star Wars fan watching this. I'm talking to the Fandom Menace. I have friends in the Fandom Menace. I love Ryan from the Fandom Menace, RK Outpost. He's, real deal dude. Mary, of course, love Mary. The Fandom Menace, there's good and bad people in it, but most of them just want good Star Wars, right? This is for you guys also because I don't want you guys to get screwed with, okay? I want y'all to notice that these George Lucas rumors are coming only from Overlord DVD / Victor Von Doomcock. Nobody else reporting on this. Nobody else. Not any of the credible movie websites. And I don't mean just the ones that are Disney shills like, I don't want to name any names, but you know the ones. No other actual credible news sources, not Jedi Pax's, not Star Wars, Jason Ward from Making Star Wars. Nobody's reporting on this except for Doomcock, and there's a lot of holes in his story. Now, again, I don't know the guy, so maybe he's being given bad information, but I'm here to tell y'all that these rumors are false, okay? And it even says here in this article that this is a rumor with no confirmation. People are definitely taking it seriously. Now, understand that you have to be careful on the internet with people telling you what you want to hear. People on YouTube love to tell others what they want to hear to garner a following. And you have to be careful not to fall for that, okay? You got to be careful here, folks, because I'm on your side. I just want good Star Wars. But I think a lot of folks are being led on to believe that there's going to be a change coming with Lucas involved, okay? There is going to be a creative turnover when Kennedy leaves next year because her contract is up. This is not a secret. This is not an inside source information. She's going to be leaving next year, most likely. Things could change. Most likely she'll be leaving Lucasfilm. We don't know who's going to replace her, but that part of the story is accurate. However, George Lucas is in no way involved with The Rise of Skywalker, and I can prove it to you here on this video. First and foremost, Doomcock said that there are 2 scenes that were cut from the film in the supposed George Lucas cut. Now, I happen to know from talking to people that the George Lucas cut does not exist. George Lucas has not been involved with these films outside of being a consultant for J.J. Abrams during Force Awakens and a little bit during Rise of Skywalker. That's it. George Lucas himself said in the interview he did with the Charlie Rose interview. Now, a lot of you guys are always very angry and upset at the Charlie Rose interview, this one right here, because Lucas called Disney the white slave owners. I want y'all to sit down and think about this for a minute. If George Lucas says in this interview, you guys have to study George Lucas, okay? Because I've been studying George Lucas since I was in 7th grade. My first book report ever was on a George Lucas book, which actually, it was a Star Wars movie, but it was converted into a book, right? It was the Star Wars novelization. And I did research on George Lucas, okay? First of all, George Lucas' entire career, he has had a major issue with Hollywood. George Lucas has always hated the Hollywood system. George Lucas says in this very interview with Charlie Rose that his movie about the Tuskegee Airmen did not get funded by Hollywood, and he had to fund it himself. He couldn't get a studio to fund that film, so he had to do it himself. And that's when he realized that not only is there racism out there in Hollywood, but he just can't get any support, okay? He never has, which is why he was smart and why he retained the rights to Star Wars, so he can get rich off of his creation and not somebody else. If you study the history of George Lucas and actually do some research, you'll know I'm right about this. So in this interview, yes, he does call the Disney company white slavers because he felt like he sold his children Star Wars away to them. Now, I want y'all to sit here and think about this for just a moment. You know the fact that they took Lucas's scripts and threw them out. You know this, right? You know that Bob Iger confirmed in his book, this is all public information, that he did not use George Lucas's scripts. Why would George Lucas, who doesn't like the Hollywood system, doesn't like the Disney Corporation, come back and shoot extra scenes and do his own cut of The Rise of Skywalker? Why would George Lucas come back and do that? Why? How does that make any sense? And case in point, here's another one. If we look at the IMDb for The Rise of Skywalker, and it's even in the film, the story creditors as a writer, okay, the only director is J.J. Abrams. They even went so far as to credit Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly, who wrote the Duel of the Fates script that never even got adapted to the movie. But because they were the original writers, they got credit, even though they had nothing to do with The Rise of Skywalker, right? So how is it that George Lucas comes back and cuts his own version of the film that nobody's talked about, no actor on the set has talked about, Mark Hamill hasn't Mark Hamill's been very vocal about this. Why has he not talked about Lucas coming back and him working under Lucas? Where's that at? Where's that at? Right? Come on, guys, use your head here. No credits at all for George Lucas. It just says based on characters created by George Lucas. George Lucas created Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, you know, the original cast, right? So he'll always get a story credit for creating the characters, but he's not listed in the screenplay or in the story or in the director. Why would they not take the original creator and put his name as a director if he was really involved? Why wouldn't Disney do that to make the fans happy? Because it never happened. According to Doomcock, there was an extra scene in the film where Rey talks to Anakin Skywalker's ghost. Now, the problem with that is it doesn't make any sense as far as narrative structure goes for the movie, because the arc of Rey in the film is that she's trying to talk to the Jedi at the very beginning of the film. She's got her eyes closed. She doesn't hear from them until the very, very end of the film. So, if that's the case, right, why would there be a scene in the middle of the movie with Anakin explaining to Rey the veil of the Force? And, like, how does that make any sense to the plot of the film, the narrative structure, or even Rey's arc? It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. It does not fit, okay? It never happened. Why hasn't Hayden tweeted about it? There's not even any clues about this. These kinds of leaks, we didn't even hear about this. We just heard that there were scenes with Jedi Ghost at the end. That is a possibility. There's no scene with Rey and Daisy Ridley and Hayden Christensen. It doesn't exist. And then the other scene, right? This is what it says in the article, which is what Doomcock said, that they're going to be reworking the scene with Han Solo where he talks to not only Solo, but he talks to Han, Luke, and Leia at the same time. Now, let me ask y'all a question. Again, y'all got to think with me here. If Mark Hamill got to do a scene with Han and Leia, with Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, right, where they were together on screen with CGI effects, why hasn't he said a word about it? Why is it that Mark Hamill publicly in interviews talked about all of these problems he had with Luke Skywalker in Last Jedi? He's publicly talked about things. He's even tweeted, ladies and gentlemen, this fake photograph right here of the 4 original leads together, and he claims that I wish this would have happened. He said, I wish this would have happened. So if he actually got his wish for Rise of Skywalker, and by the way, he tweeted this out before Rise of Skywalker came out, why didn't he follow up a tweet saying, oh, well, we shot this, but, you know, it didn't make it to the final cut? Why is it that nobody who is credible, except for Victor Von Doomcock, is talking about Lucas' involvement in this movie? Nobody. Not any of the actors. There is no NDA for this, folks. NDA is a non-disclosure agreement that you sign prior to the release of the film. After the movie's already out, you're allowed to talk about certain things. You can't talk about everything, obviously, because you want to maintain your relationship with Disney positive. But why would Mark Hamill, who has obviously been very openly critical of Disney, why has he not said anything about this scene? Why has nobody said anything about this scene? If you watch this interview with George Lucas, he himself says in this interview he does not want to direct for a studio ever again. It's in the interview, guys. I know some of y'all only saw the snippet of the white slave owners thing, but if you watch the entire interview, which, by the way, I promise you it's good. It is a great interview because he talks about the Hollywood system. He talks about how the fans treated him, right, back in the day, right? He talks about how if he's going to make a movie, he's going to make private movies for himself and his friends to watch. You guys have to understand that if you study the history of George Lucas came out of the same class as guys like Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg. That they all came up together, right? All those great filmmakers, right? And Lucas has always had a problem with the Hollywood system. He's never liked it. He's always had issues with studios meddling in his projects. He's hated it. He wants to have control over everything, right? So he even says in the interview, if I were to show up, I would just muck things up and ruin it, so I'm just going to stay away. He says in the interview, this is what George Lucas said in the interview. He said, giving up Star Wars is like a relationship. When you go through a breakup, you don't just drive by the person's house every day to see how they're doing. You let it go. And the only time that Lucas has actually come back is once every time they shoot a movie, he'll come on the set and talk to, like, for example, in Rogue One, he was on the set once or twice. He'll do that. But as far as him actually writing and shooting his own cut of the film, guys, come on. Come on, dude. What makes more sense here? And what blows my mind about this story is that there are new elements being added and new leaks, and I'm using air quotes here, leaks that Doomcock's been putting out literally every day about how Lucas is going to come back and replace Kathleen Kennedy. Why would he come back and work for this company? Like, and in the role that he never wanted, that he gave to Kennedy. This guy is a billionaire. And if you study this man, if you look through his history, look through, like I said, his interviews, not just this one, other interviews, he doesn't like working for anybody else. And at the end of the day, Disney is the rightful owner of Star Wars right now because they bought it. Am I happy about that? No, of course not. I don't like the Disney direction. I've said this before. But I also don't like a lot of you guys being fooled and lied to. And again, I'm not saying that Doomcock is a liar, but the more and more that this guy uploads trash and stories that are not true, the more I'm starting to wonder if he's just trying to be like Mike Zero, except that people are running with his story. I'm just being real. Like, I ain't got a problem with the dude, I swear. But like, it's just constant like BS that makes no sense. None of this makes any sense. You would think that if Lucas was even remotely on set, that there would have been a story out about it. From Jason Ward of Making Star Wars, who has been right about everything pretty much, even months before any of this stuff got public. People give Doomcock credit for getting the spoilers right, but he got that from Jedi Pax's. Jedi Pax's, I covered that on my channel. I covered the Jedi Pax's spoilers in August of last year, guys. I thought they were fake. Turns out they were real. You have to be careful with people who are telling you what you want to hear, dude. And it makes me sad because as a creator, I dealt with this kind of shit on my other channel, Geekdom 101. Last year, I said that Dragon Ball Super was coming back. I verified it with 9 different sources and even showed screenshots of it on my video, except I bleeped out the people's names. I don't want anybody to get fired. It didn't come back. It got postponed. I didn't make a video a day or a video a week about it. I made 4 or 5 videos for the entire year. On that story. Could I have milked it? Sure. I didn't. Because I'm not that kind of guy. But it just comes off like every day we have these new leaks. And they always hide behind this is an unspecified rumor. Take it with a grain of salt. So that way when it ends up not being true, they can say, well, we told you it was a rumor. That's pussy shit. I'm sorry, but if you have actual sources within Lucasfilm, you should be a little bit more confident about what you report without saying stuff like, well, it's unverifiable. I understand that as a reporter, sometimes you have to do that kind of stuff because things do change. I've been the victim of that myself, right? Things change, happens all the time. But Why is nobody else reporting on this? Why are random YouTubers being given these scoops from Lucasfilm? Why is, like, just think, guys. Think. Think about it. There is no George Lucas cut. There were no Disney screenings. That's a BS. Walt Disney Corporation does not do public screenings. They didn't do it for any of the MCU movies. The only way you can get invited into a Disney screening is if you're either a very close relative of somebody who worked in the film or somebody who works in the film. And even then, if you're a relative, you might not get in. There's no public screenings, guys. There was no like, oh, well, people hated it, people didn't like it. If that was the case, if there were really public screenings, why didn't they have a bunch of people coming out with more leaked details on the movie after the so-called screenings? It's all BS, dudes. I'm telling you. So either this dude is just making it up to get views, which again, it's YouTube. I'm not going to hate on the guy. You know, it's a hustle. He can do whatever he wants. I don't know the dude, so I'm not going to knock him. Or he's being fed misinformation, maybe even from Disney themselves. But then that begs the question, why are other reporters not covering this story who are legitimate movie websites? The only ones that are covering it are ones that are basically saying that it came from him. I mean, if you look right here, the rumor, which comes from the Overlord DVD YouTube channel, all these guys are basically jacking that story and running with it because he's getting a lot of views, and I guess they think he's credible. And maybe he is credible. I'm not knocking the guy. But I'm telling you right now, there is no George Lucas cut. And I will be proven right in time. Wait a year. Wait 2 years when we don't hear anything else about it. Wait till somebody actually asks George Lucas himself, because you know what's going to happen, and he says there's no such thing. Then what? Then you've killed your credibility. So when you're on this platform, if you want to become a news source, you have to be very, very careful, because there are people out to get you. And maybe somebody is out to get Doomcock. Maybe somebody's lying to him. That's always a possibility, right? Again, don't know the guy. But this information is false. The only thing that's right about this information, and I know because I have a friend of mine I have 2 friends that work out in LA, not on Star Wars, but they talk to these people. You can believe me if you want to. If not, I don't care. It's the truth. And there's no such thing. The only thing we know for sure is there is a creative turnover coming, and there are people in Lucasfilm who don't like Kennedy's direction. That is a fact. That is true. There are people in the company who do not like Kennedy's direction. But this like civil war where Lucas is going to come back and take over, it's not going to happen. I don't want to give y'all bad news, but it's not going to happen. Study the guy's history. He will never work for Disney, bro. I assure you of that. So with that being said, I'll bring this video to a close. And it just sickens me because this story is such bullshit. It is such bullshit, and it's getting worse because every day there's more and more bullshit. And I know that eventually people are going to start catching on to it because it doesn't make any sense. As much as we want it to be real, be careful what you hear on the internet. I'll catch you down the road, and remember, I love you guys.